Alrighty. Tasting Tuesdays. That was really pretty actually for an 18. Aww. Aww. Dun, dun, dun. Alright. Hey, babe, can you just... Good evening, James. First one on tonight. It's good to see you, sir. Virtually, obviously, but I hope you're doing well. There's Susan Glenn. Hello, everybody. We have 12 people so far. Pour yourself a glass of wine. We're dealing with V Squared tonight. We're going to give it a couple of minutes just to allow people to get situated, get their glasses, and we have a fun time tonight. We're going to talk about one of the sort of the most popular wines that we produce, and the V Squared. So for those that don't know, we are tasting the 2018 V Squared. If you don't have the 18 and you have access to the 19, just as phenomenal. One of my favorites. So grab some V Squared. Let's see who's there. So Mr. Scharfenmeyer, hello from Mark and Lynn. OH, there's Lynn Pentos, Lanny White, howdy partner, and right back to you, Lanny and Suzanne, some of the best people in the world. There's Miranda Butler. It's so lovely to see Miranda. Drew and Kevin Northleet out of PA. There's Trish Seinwell. To Jeff, Virginia Winetime is here. Paul and Warren. Gosh, we got some really awesome people. There's Kathy Harden, Erica Johansson, Jeff Thorpe. Hello, Buckeyes, and go blue. God, you must be kind of happy that they canceled Big Ten, so we don't have to tell you how badly we whooped you in November. Linda Sims, Andrea Peters, David Maddox, Sylvia Miller, Io, thank you. Erica Johansson, Io indeed. Catherine Smith, shout out to Catherine, who came by the winery this afternoon, realized she didn't have the 2018 V Squared, pretty much bought the winery. So Catherine, lovely to see you. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. There's Mary Goodblueness. Donna Goff is there. She says she loves the V Squared. So do we. I am excited to try the 2018. But you can see how much I love the 19. There's they never put enough wine in the bottle. Do you have that problem as well? Because golly, this lasts about an hour. So got the 19, but we're going to focus on the 18 tonight. So really, really, really excited. Let's see who else is there. There's Terry Hauser, Linda Sims, John Franz from Fort Myers in Florida. Thank you for joining us. And Erica, I'm glad to get your name right, and happy to be lucky in that way. There's Karina Nagib. Golly, hello everybody. It's been 6 days and 23 hours since we last chatted. I've missed you. Dave Maddox says we drank all our delicious 2018. Well, Dave, guess what? We have 60 bottles left, and again, there's going to be a bit more of a discount for you tonight, so you can get some. Let's see who else we have there. There's Gina Shea. Gina with K Deuce, I believe it is. Is that Gina up in Michigan? If that is, wave, say hi. Gina, great to see you. Hope you're doing well. Laura Purdy, and lovely to see you, Laura. Thank you so much for everything that you do, and love having you be a part of it. Let's give it, say, 1 or 2 more minutes. I'm actually doubly fisting tonight because I do want to do a side comparison between the 18 and the 19. We are focusing on the V Squared, but if you don't have the V Squared, that's fine. Pour something out. Pour something out. Don't pour something out. Pour something in the glass. If it's not Keswick, drink Virginia. Doesn't matter, but pour yourself something. Conversation without wine or without something to drink is just gossiping, right? So we're here to learn something, meet people online, say hello, and have some fun. So it is 7:04 on Tuesday, and how about we jump into it? My lovely assistant, aka the wife, is looking after the little guy who's been a bit fussy. So if I don't get to all your questions, I do apologize. I will try and do that, but shoot away. And let's jump into a wine that, I think people love this wine. So yeah, I think we're set up. So let's go. Firstly, as always, there's Jane Pyrak, Sylvia Miller, Emily Granis. Our group is doing a 19 and an 18 vertical too. Well, cheers, so am I. So cheers to you guys. Love it. So let's jump into where the name comes from, how we make the wine, how is 18 different to 19. Let's talk about the vintage and what we do and what kind of wine we try and make. Answer some of your questions and just have some fun. Forget about the world for a while. So let's start with hello. Hi, how are you? Appreciate you being here. Thank you for listening to me waffle about wine. I know you got better things to do, but thank you for being here. I hope you've had a wonderful, wonderful week and weekend. Pity about the rain, but we need it, so rain is not a bad thing. But thank you for joining us. So, V squared. I know some people say V2, but it's V squared. And we only started making it in 2012, even though our vineyards were planted in 2000 and our first vintage was 2002. So let's back it up a little bit. Let's talk about how this wine came to be, what varietals we use in it, what certain things you can taste when you get it, and go from there. So V squared is predominantly Verdejo, and we'll talk about Verdejo, where it comes from. But our vineyards in the front, when you drive up, go around the pond, you've got the Norton on the left, the Touriga. You got 4 really, really sort of nondescript rows, and that's the Verdejo. And that was planted in 2000. 2002 was our first vintage, but we only started making a varietal wine in 2006. Up until that point, we were actually selling the fruit to another local Virginia winery, and that Virginia winery is actually not producing wine anymore, but we were selling that fruit. And in 2006, we got a frost, which kind of does happen in Virginia every now and again. Obviously, this year, case in point. We kept the Verdejo and we made the first wine. I had never made Verdejo up until that point, or prior to that point. I can't even say I honestly drank Verdejo at that point, but we made this beautifully sort of stone fruit. It's sort of our version of a Sauvignon Blanc. It's kind of bright, it's got citrus, it's got stone fruit, it's got minerality. And we made, up until 2011, a single varietal Verdejo. So why don't we do that anymore? Well, that's a great question, and let me answer it. So in 2012, harvest was happening. We picked the Verdejo, everything was great. We picked the Viognier. We kind of harvested them separately with the intention of making 2 different wines. Took it off to the cold room, put it away with the intention of coming in the next morning and processing, which is how we do it. We chill the fruit down and we process the next morning. And when you arrive in the morning and you go, oh God, something doesn't right. Well, guess what? That cold room was a hot box. Something had happened and we just lost cooling and opened it up, and there was CO2. The wines were fermenting, and what we decided to do was just to basically toss the Viognier and the Verdejo together. We weighed the fruit and we ended up with a 51% Verdejo, 49% Viognier blend. Made this what eventually became such a pretty wine. You had the stone fruits and the citrus and the green and the grassy and sort of that thiolytic kind of character from the Verdejo. But then obviously you get from Viognier, as you know, it's very expressive and it's perfumey and it's floral. And this juxtaposition of wines and varietals sort of worked. We wanted to bottle the wine. We didn't know what to call it. Do you go with a generic name? It's a once-off, right? We're just going to create a label. We're going to bottle it. We're going to go back to making Verdejo. I'm not sure who came up with the idea of V squared, but that's where the label came from. It was an accident. I'd like to say a happy accident, although I know there's a lot of people out there always saying, when are you going to make a varietal Verdejo again? And quite honestly, I don't know if we will. V squared is one of the most popular summertime, vibrant, accessible, drinkable, porch pounding kind of wines that we make. But in 2012 was the first vintage that we made V squared, and it was dominantly Verdejo, but just by 2%. Now, from that point on, we have made what is now lovingly known as the V squared. All right. The varietal has always, or the wine rather, has always got Verdejo in it. It doesn't always have Viognier. It could have Vidal Blanc. Now, if you know our property a little bit, the initial planting, we had 16 acres of Viognier and we had the Verdejo. In recent years, we've planted a little Vidal Blanc, in amongst the Viognier. And that was done because that block is actually at one of the lowest points on the estate. And Vidal Blanc has a really unique characteristic. And that is, if we get a frost, as we did this year, the secondary bud on Vidal Blanc is actually fruitful. So this year, while our Viognier, there's no fruit out there, the Vidal Blanc is carrying a lot of fruit. So that was done with the intention, because it is a sort of a mid-season ripener. It produces some sugar. It's got some lovely acidity. And sometimes we put it in with the Viognier, and sometimes it even makes it into the V squared. So the first thing, the 2018 is a blend of 78% Verdeo. It's got 18% Vidal Blanc, and as you know, that's 96%. So this is not V squared. This is V squared plus a little bit extra. Another V varietal, 4% Viognier. And that's the first and the only time that we've used 3 varietals. So let's talk about the grapes, how we make it. Let's taste it, because at the end of the day, you know, we're here to drink wine, not really talk about it, right? So, just getting some inspiration, basically. But so let's talk about Verdejo. Verdejo is it's from Rueda. It's very famous in the Rueda region of Spain, and it's located in the Castilla de Leon region in the northernmost of Spain. And this is a high plateau region that has a continental climate, which means it's got really cold winters and really, really hot summers, right? Now, the DO of it, if it's called Rueda, it's got 50% Verdeo. If it's Rueda Verdeo, it's 85%. So it's very, very famous in Spain. It's actually the 5th most planted varietal in Spain. Now, a lot of people say, is that the same as Verdelho? Verdelho. And the answer is, even though the enunciation is somewhat similar, it's actually 2 different varietals. Verdelho comes from the Madeira region in Portugal, and it makes the off-dry, sort of sweeter, fortified wines of Madeira. So first sort of key point and fun fact is that Verdejo and Verdelho are 2 different grapes. All right, so we're dealing with the Spanish varietal Verdejo, which is very famous in the Rueda region, and I believe, and I might be wrong, but I think we are the only winery on the East Coast that actually grows this varietal. Okay, so Viognier, you know, Viognier is a Rhone varietal. You know, many years ago, back in like 2008, 9, 10, 11, you know, people thought that Viognier should have been the state grape of Virginia. You know, I don't think a lot of people would say that anymore, but if you're a consumer of Virginia wine, I think everyone knows what Viognier is. It has opulence, it has sort of fruit, it has sort of yellow spectrum, peaches, pineapples, apricots, but it can be quite flavorful with texture. But what it does for me, it lacks acidity. Sometimes Viognier can be very flabby, which is the term we use when a wine doesn't carry enough acid, and you get this texture and this richness and this body, but you know, it doesn't have the acidity in the wine as well. Okay, so that's Viognier. You know it. What is Vidal? Now, Vidal is a hybrid varietal, and it's actually a cross between a Vitis grape, which is Trebbiano, or Ugni Blanc, which is you know, they use that mainly for sort of cognac and cheap wine, and a cross between Rayon d'Or. And it was actually developed in the 1930s by a French grape breeder, Jean-Louis Vidal. Okay, now because it's so cold hardy, right now it's very popular in the really cold wine growing regions in the world. Go to Canada, you know, you go to British Columbia, Ontario. You know, it makes ice wines. It's grown in Sweden, where it's made ice wines. It is in Virginia. You know, obviously we can't make ice wines. Ice wines in the true sense is when grapes freeze on the vine. You know, you pick them at extremely high sugar levels in January, February. You extract a minute amount of really, really sweet elixir liquid gold, and they make the dessert wines, which is the ice vine, or the ice wines out of Canada as well. It's really thick-skinned. It's not sort of it's pretty resistant to downy mildew. It produces a pretty good crop year in, year out. It harvests at the same time as Viognier. So it's a varietal that we started putting amongst our Viognier to make sure that we could get fruit from that block as well. All right, so those are the 3 varietals. but incredibly different, right? You've got, the stone fruit, citrus, you've got the floral, and then I think you've got sort of that pithiness. And when you think of pithiness, think of like a bitter almond. That's probably the best way to describe it. It's that finish. It's like drinking an IPA beer. You've got the lager, but you've got an IPA with the bitter units. I think you get a little bit of that sort of phenolic kind of grip, but I always describe that as bitter almond on the back palate as well. So 2018, we've spoken about it before. 2018, everyone says, how would you describe it? And I would say it was quite crap, actually. It just rained. And it rained and rained and rained, and it didn't stop. We got 92 inches of rain, and there were some really, really good things that came out of that in terms of data and figuring out our vineyard and where our best grapes go, and allows us to sort of make better wines and be better winemakers and better growers and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, the quality of the wine, here's the secret. It's actually not about the winemaker, it's all about the fruit, right? So when you get fruit that's maybe underripe, or physiologically it's not there, you got green seeds and green skins and low color development and muted flavors and watery flavors because of the water, the wines, the potential just goes down a little bit. It's the nature of, I think, grape growing and wine growing, because at the end of the day, the distinction is we're not grape growers, we're wine growers. Our intention is to always grow the grape with making the wine in the background, right? That's always the thing. And in 18, we were dealing with bird-pecked fruit, rot, sour rot, vinegar rot, low sugars, aromas that were slightly muted, slightly watery. We had to work really, really, really hard to not only clean the juice, make sure we make a wine that you like, because again, we were following the 2017 vintage, which was an incredible vintage. So how do we make a wine that doesn't sort of scream that, oh God, this is a way lesser quality, right? So the blend is different. Like I said, it's 78% Verdeo, it's 18% Vidal Blanc, and then it's 4% Viognier. So the first thing we got to talk about is how do we make the blend? Because number one, we could pick the grapes separately, make the wine separately, and in a lab sort of play around as the wine sort of age. You can play the Verdeo, you do 50-50, 30. You've been to Consensus, you know exactly how it works, right? That's how we do it. We take the wines, and in the setting in a lab, we make up sample after sample after sample, and we taste and we find that balance. This is a field blend. And a field blend is when the grapes are harvested together. So we measure the fruit by the poundage. We can measure out the sort of the percentages. But unlike picking all the wines separately, all this fruit was picked together. It was machine harvested. That's the other thing. So machine harvested, basically the way it works, it's a big sort of, looks like a big N, has ribs, and it does that, and it shakes the vines, and out comes the grapes, right? Immediately into the press. The press, in years where the quality of the fruit is not great, the initial juice that comes out always has your sort of rot metabolites, right? So we kind of discard the juice that comes out first. It's slightly vinegary, it's slightly acrid. We don't want that. You tumble it, you discard that juice. The juice that comes out after that is a little bit cleaner, right? So sulfur. A lot of people say, do you add sulfur? Transparency, to be honest, yes, we do. The other thing that is really, really important is the kind of wine that we want to make. And we want to make a wine that's very expressive of thiols and a thiolytic kind of wine. And I'll explain a little bit about what I'm talking about in a bit, right? So the fruit's into the press, the juice gets sulfured, we're protecting it against oxidation, so we're adding dry ice. We have inert gases. We're trying to keep it away from exposure to oxygen. We run it into a tank. The tank is cool because of a glycolytic system, or a glycol system rather. The glycol is really, really cold. The temperature is regulated. That juice doesn't ferment initially. We settle it, and we actually use what we call a pectolytic enzyme. And an enzyme is a catalyst. It speeds up a reaction, breaks down pectin. Those solids settle to the bottom of the tank. We measure the clarity of the juice, and we're measuring it by something called Nephol turbidity units, or what we call NTUs. Once we have the juice that's not too clear and too dirty, we rack it off. And racking, very simply, is where you draw the wine off the solids at the bottom of the vessel, bottom of the tank. That juice then gets fermented. This was actually fermented with yeast, a yeast that actually is a South African yeast named Vin13, fermented at slightly warmer temperatures. A lot of people say you ferment really, really cold, those low 50s. These were fermented in the low to high 60s, 62, 3, 4, 5, right? Initially, you're going to have that sort of lag phase. where the yeast is sort of budding, and then it starts consuming the sugars, the sucrose, the glucose, and the fructose is turning alcohol. And as it gets to the bottom where there's no more sugar, you get a bit of a stall. So 18 days, and that's when primary fermentation was finished. We measure it with a hydrometer. We make sure all the sugar is scavenged. And then 7 days later, we rack the wine off what we call gross lees. Now, gross lees, very simply, is if you stir up the tank, what settles to the bottom within 1 to 2 days, we describe as gross lees. The fine and the medium lees, the wine gets into a tank and gets stored on it. It gets sulfured to prevent the secondary fermentation. If you don't know what that means, it's very simply the natural malic acid turning into lactic acid. Green apple, malum, Latin word for green apple, turning into a softer, rounder, richer milk acid. Now, with these wines, we want to make wines that are vibrant and drinkable and summery and, linear and has tension to it. So we want to conserve as much acid as possible, all right? And that's very simply it. We protein fine it, we add a bentonite, we cold stabilize it. What that does, very simply, is to make sure that you, the consumer, doesn't have a wine that has a haze floating in it. Because again, you taste wines with your eyes first and foremost, right? A little bit of crystals. You might see some potassium bitartrate crystals, and that's quite normal. So we freeze the wine. We hold the wine at like 28 degrees for a week or so, and then the wine is sterile filtered. Sterile filtered is at 0.45 micron. It's very tight. It pulls out any yeast or any bacteria in the wine, and that means that when you get the bottle of the wine, you can stick it in the freezer. It's going to go in clear. It's going to come out clear. Protein haze, you find if you buy a wine in the morning and it sits in the hot car, it gets, my sister-in-law just walked in, so hi to Chris, by the way. A hot car, the wine can show a bit of a haze, and then obviously we want to sterile filter the wine because we don't want the wines re-fermenting in the bottle. All right, so there's a fair amount of work that goes into it. We bottle it fairly early in that sort of March, April, because we want to release it when the weather's like that behind me, when the sun's out and it's hot and it's humid and you want something really, really vibrant. All right, so let's jump into it. What do you think? Enough bloody bubbling. All right, so cheers to your health. Hope you and your families are safe, sound, doing well. So yeah, I've got the two wines side by side, and I don't know if I can do it. Maybe I can hold it. I just need a bit of a white screen here. Let's see. Got to back it up a little bit. It's hard to really see. But honestly, for me, the 18 has a little bit of a darker color to it. Maybe if I hold it like that, it's more sort of golden yellow and straw color, where the 19 is a little bit more paler. And that I think that's a product of the time in the bottle, but I think it's also because of the Vidal. So again, let's give it a swirly swirl, and then a sniffy sniff, and then a tasty taste, and that's what it's all about. So cheers. So knowing first and foremost that there's Vidal in and Viognier in, I think psychologically you always think it's going to be tropical, it's going to have that pithiness, and it is from a wet year, so we know all of these going in, right? And wine is that. It's taking information and tasting the wines, but you kind of want to put all that to the side and judge it, because if you judged it against the 19, you're comparing Ohio State to Michigan. They just don't belong in the same conversation. I've got a slide in the Big Ten joke there somewhere. So the 18, really, really, it's actually quite fruit forward. It's really sort of pineapple-y and tropical. Has a really nice sort of oiliness to it. It's sort of a viscosity. It smells quite thick and rich. Not in a bad way. Not in a bad way. It just has this really sort of hedonistic, amplified kind of nose, which I really, really like. A little bit of white flour, like white linen. When you have your bed sheets and you pull them out of the dryer, you have that sort of clean kind of flavor. But really, really pretty nose. If we were to say that this came from one of the worst vintages that we went through, I'd be super impressed with this wine. So yeah. So into the mouth, run it around the mouth. Taste it on the tip of your tongue, the side, and the back. Acidity and fruit you're going to get more in the front of your palate. You really want that nice sort of transition, to the back palate. Again, we're talking about balance. And again, balance for me, very simply, is that everything in the wine, all the components, whether it's alcohol and fruit and acid and tannins, nothing stands out. You don't want a wine that is so acidic, but it has no back palate and finish, because what will happen is it's bright and it's vibrant, and then it just falls apart. And then your last sort of thought of the wine is that it's just uninspiring. Conversely, you don't want a wine that is so sweet or rich, and it almost needs that acid to sort of cut it. And then again, in terms of tannins, you don't want bitterness. And so balance, very simply, is it's all about harmony, right? So that nothing fights and nothing is sort of kind of standing out. And I think the other thing, and this is one of the values of putting wine away for a little bit, there's a natural, kind of process that takes place where all those things sort of harmonize a little bit as well. So it certainly doesn't have the acid of the 19. I mean, you gotta be quite honest and say that the 19 has a lot more acid. But what the 19 doesn't have and the 18 does, really has lovely body. And the body is not coming from oak. Generally, when you think of body and rich textured wines, you're thinking of a lot of sort of surly aging. The dead yeast sits at the bottom of the vessel and we're stirring those barrels up, or the oak influence and the tannins, and they react with the sort of the protein in your salivary glands. And that's where you get body. But this is all tank fermented and matured. So there's no oak, but it has this really lovely finish, but it has some nice weight and depth to it. And I would imagine that comes from the Vidal. I think the fruit forwardness and the vibrancy aromatically, I think that's both from the Vidal and the Viognier. And then obviously you've got the Verdeo, which is the dominant part. And I think you get a little bit of that sort of wet rock, wet stone. It's kind of like going outside once it's rained and you have that chalk on the sidewalk, or you have that sort of drizzle and the rocks are wet, or almost on a beach. Not nearly as like Albarino, where it has that really sort of saltiness, but it has a little bit of that sort of wet rock, sort of flinty component. But I do get a lot of sort of the thiols. And what a thiol is, by the way, a thiol is it's a sulfhydryl kind of component, right? So you have your radical, which is your R, it has a sulfur and it has a hydrogen. And it's also known as a reduction component. So it's a VSC. And a VSC is a volatile sulfur component, of which there's 9. Everyone knows the first one, and that's H2S, right? Hydrogen sulfide, which is rotten egg. Now, if we're trying to make wine in a reduced kind of fashion, we try and prevent the opposite. We try and prevent oxidation. Remember, we spoke about sort of inert gases and dry ice and blanketing and running it into a tank and fermenting at warmer temperatures and settling. That is all done to sort of express that sort of thiolytic character in a wine. So when you think of flinty and gunsmoke, and I find those to be more sort of sulfur-containing compounds, which are known as thiols, or also mercaptans. And mercaptans can come across as like cat peeing on a mulberry bush. It's the best way to describe it. Or boxwood or sandalwood. Those are all mercaptans. I think you get it a little bit more in the 19. Part of that is because 19 was an incredible year. So again, how can you compare two vastly different vintages? But I got to tell you, I think this 18 is lovely. So just to taste again, see if our first impression is our second and our third, because these wines are going to change around as well. And then we'll take some questions. So if you're trying the 18, I would be extremely sort of interested to hear, number one, how are you having it? Are you having it with food? What temperature are you serving it at? What glass do you have it in? And more importantly, what do you like about it? And if you don't like about it, let me know too. So again, that sort of slightly more yellow color. Verdeo many years ago was really making uninspired, oxidized, nutty kind of wines. So again, we try and prevent that sort of oxidative character. So again, we're making wines slightly reductively. But again, from a really, really wet and challenging vintage. But you do get, it's interesting. I get a little bit of like brown pear, Bosc pear, Bury Bosc, green pear. The floral is still there, but there's some sort of secondary or tertiary aromas that's coming out. And that's really, really interesting because the wine is actually starting to warm up a little bit. So the aromas are starting to change. It might get more expressive. It might get more floral. The warmer the wines, the acid the perception of acid sort of decreases a little bit. And that's why it's so really, really interesting. It's really drink what you like, how you like, and when you like, and play with different things. Erica Johansson says, it's pretty tasty with goat cheese. Perfect pairing. But yeah, again, a little bit more of that floral, that flowery, that wet linen, that white flower. Beautiful, sort of beautiful nose. It's actually way more aromatic and expressive than I thought it would be, especially knowing how tough this vintage was. So, okay, so yeah, I would say the 18 is a bit more texture, a little bit more body, a little bit more oily. The 19 is just racy and vibrant and bright. I think comparatively, maybe I would say the 19 is the better wine, but I love this 18. I think for the vintage and for the quality of the fruit that we had, kudos to my team. I think they did an incredible job making this wine, and if you're drinking it, I hope you have it as well. So one of the questions was serving temperature. It's a great question. You know, I'm not sort of skirting the fact, but I would say anywhere from, say, 38 to 45, and that's quite chilled. I think that would be the best sort of serving temperature for the wine. I would put it in a, I don't know if you can see, but I have a narrower, thinner kind of glass. I wouldn't use a big bowl like you would for Chardonnay. It doesn't need a lot of oxygen. So for me, a thinner glass would be better. So the serving temperature, I would serve this from a drinking point of view a lot colder than this wine is right now. I would say this is probably in the 55, 57 range. For tasting purposes, this is fine. This is lovely. But if I were to drink this wine, you know, from I'm going to enjoy it, I'm going to experience it, I'm going to drink it in the best way possible. For me personally, I would have this a little bit colder. Some of the foods, you know, generally when you think of Verdejo, you're thinking, I always think sort of shellfish and shrimp, you know, oysters on the half shell, you know, but you can do cheeses. I would go more sort of softer cheeses. Someone said goat cheese. I think, you know, goat cheese is a wonderful pairing. I think this could work with really sort of herbaceous, you know, sort of like chives, thyme, you know, anything like that. I think it could probably stand up to maybe grilled chicken. Someone said, did I hear that there was, someone's having it with a pineapple salsa. Be interesting to see the sweetness in a relish like that, if it would bring out the sweetness in the wine or if it would sort of mute the sweetness in the wine. But yeah, at the end of the day, you know, again, what we are trying to communicate is we make wine out to be too bloody complex. It's fermentable grape juice, for God's sakes. So if you're going to drink it, please, 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 please enjoy it in the way that you like it. So if you want to pair this with a big ass steak with a peppercorn sauce and that's how you love it, that's the best pairing. If you want to put ice blocks in the wine and that's going to give you enjoyment, go for it. You know, at the end of the day, we want you to drink Virginia, drink wine, but we want you to have fun. Andrea Peter says it's great with brie. Again, those sort of softer cheeses. Virginia wine time. Warren says he loves it at room temperature too. I do too. I think sometimes we serve our red wines too warm and our white wines too cold. But I think in a style like this, a colder temperature might work. It also depends really simply on what you're pairing it with. You know, I think this could go really well with sort of fishes, lionfish, trout, river trout. I think you're going there. But at the end of the day, folks, my God, don't you just want to come home sometimes and just pour yourself a glass of wine and sit on the deck, take in the view and say, oh my God, we are so lucky to be in this country. Let's just drink something, right? Dinner's being made. We'll open up something else. You know, at the end of the day, we want wines to be drinkable. We want you to enjoy it. We don't want you to have food. You know, the fact that it is food friendly is great, and there's a whole world of exploration of which foods you can have it with and all that. But at the end of the day, folks, you got to enjoy it on its own. John France says, did you say earlier that the Verdejo grapes were used in Sauvignon Blanc wine? John, no. I would just describe Verdejo in the same sort of way as we would Sauvignon Blanc. We don't grow Sauvignon Blanc. Personally, I think Verdejo could be used in Sauvignon Blanc. It would be an interesting sort of blend. But I would say, you know, especially with the 19, the 19, if you were tasting it blind, I think you would say this could perhaps be a Sauvignon Blanc. And that's also sort of the type of wine that we try and make. I mean, you've got the very expressive sort of New Zealand, you know, the vibrant gooseberry. Sauvignon Blancs that I love come from the Loire, from Sancerre. And I think that sort of minerality and that vibrancy and that whetstone and that citrus, wines that are built on that really lovely juicy core of acidity, those are the wines that I like to drink. And I really think, given the year, like the 19, the V squared or the Verdeo based wines lends its way there. One question was, how do you determine the blend? And that's a phenomenal question, by the way. It's one that I should answer because the blend does change. So we pick the Verdejo normally and we fill up a tank. And honestly, what we do is we actually fill the tank to the brim with the Viognier or the Verdal. That's the way we do it. We want to make sure we grow such a little bit of Verdejo. It would be a shame to pick it, make the wine, and then store it in a tank. We spoke very earlier about minimizing headspace to minimize oxidation. And again, what you want to do is, you don't want a tank that's 3/4 full sitting with a headspace. So we tend to add the Viognier. We take a flow meter, we measure the literage or the gallons, we work out the percentage. But the style of the wine, and if we're picking Viognier separately to go into the V squared, we always pick the Viognier greener, lighter, more acidic. We're not looking for a lot of those sort of tropical flavors. Because again, the V squared has to scream green, bright, citrus, stone fruit kind of character as well. So Linda Irvin says yes, the 19 does taste similar to a Sauvignon Blanc. That's really, really great. So Aaron and I think V2 pairs or V squared pairs well with our port. Amen, brother. Love it. Kathy and Aaron Harden, appreciate that. We just want you to enjoy wine. We got to get. I think when wines are too complicated, it takes away from the enjoyment factor, right? If you have to think of food and what and this and that, God, that's just tiring. And that just cuts into drinking time, right? So we want you to enjoy the wine, and it's such a great seasonal wine. But I got to tell you, and this is not a sales technique, this is an honest answer, as you know, or hope you know, that I will give you a straight, non-BS answer when it comes to the wines. I am... and this is the first time I've had this 18 in a long time. I am very proud of my team for kind of putting forth this wine. I think the quality of this wine exceeds the quality of the vintage. So what does that mean? Number one, I have a hell of a team, and number two, we have a hell of a vineyard. So kudos to those guys and girls for doing such a wonderful job. Let's see what else is there. So Beth says we're drinking it slightly chilled. That is perfect. So Laura Purdy is going to Erica's house for a cheese selection. Wine is always best served with other people. And hello, I've got two little rugrats that might want to say hi very, very quickly. So first rugrat is Miss Aria, as you know. My second rugrat is my niece, Tiger Lily. Mwah. All right, so we'll be right there in a bit. Love you guys. See you in a bit. Oh, okay, you can take that bottle over there. All right, thanks guys, we'll see you in a bit. So that's about it. I think sometimes we talk too much about wine. We just want to drink it. But a product of, I think in 18, you really talk about how really cool the vineyard is. And what a wonderful vineyard we have, that even in a year that got 92 inches of rain can make a wine that a year after in the bottle, this is not falling apart. Question is, how long should you or could you age the V squared wines? And I think it's a two-part question. Could you age? I think, again, the point of aging a wine is to improve the experience of drinking it, right? I would say you could age it for 3, 4, 5 years, that the wine is not going to become undrinkable. I think it's best within 1 to 2. Personal opinion, I think the wines change a little bit and they become more intriguing, but I think they're best at 1 to 2. This wine, the 19 rather, has been in the bottle for just a couple of months and is drinking beautifully. A few more months and I really think it's going to peak, it's going to sing. Would you or should you leave it longer than that? In my opinion, I'd say no. I would say the joy of V squared is how accessible and bloody delicious it is early on, right? Could you age it if you wanted to experience or sort of see what time does to a bottle? Yeah, you could age it, but I don't think you should. Not that you're doing yourself a disservice, but I really think that these wines, their charm is in how approachable it is. Alison Turkle says, we are coming again in September. Will you have any V Squared 2018? Well, Alison, I'm glad you mentioned that, because let's chat. 2018, we have 60 bottles available, and that is it. So, Alison, if you like the wine, here's a deal. I'll make you a deal. If you're a wine club member, and you're a gold member and you normally get 25%, we're going to give you 30% tonight. If you're a silver, you normally get 20, you're going to get 25%. And if you're not a wine club member, again, we love all of you. We wish you would join the wine club, but we didn't give you 10%. So what I would do, Alison, is that buy a few bottles, have us age it for you, and pick it up when you come in September. Then you know you have it. There's no worry. There's no rush. But we have 5 cases left of this really, really lovely, quite layered, quite complex V Squared. Where's Al? I'm surprised he hasn't jumped on me for saying something about OSU. He's got to be there somewhere. So if he's there, kind of say something. I miss you, boss. I miss sort of bantering with you. Let's see. Karina says, love seeing the kids. She loves smelling the wine, telling what she gets on the nose. Karina, at the end of the day, we make good wines. But I had a hand in making amazing kids. My niece is amazing and Aria amazing. They love wine. And we look forward to the time where we can get families back to the winery. And then we can introduce our kids and they can play together. So Donna Goff says, our wine thermometer says it's 61 degrees. It's nice and chilled, but warm enough to really appreciate the aromas and the flavors. Great point. There is a different temperature, I think, for sort of analytical and diving into the wine to really think about it. And then there's a time where you just want to drink it. So maybe a different temperature. For me, enjoyment, I would go in the low 40s, high 30s to low 40s. I think if you really want to sort of dive into it and analyze the wine, probably in the 50s would be great. Andrea Peter says, how is this year going with the rain? Thank you for that, Andrea. It's been welcomed. It's been needed. Our vines were showing a little bit of heat stress, not where they were shutting down, but the leaves were starting to cool up, turn away from the sun a little bit. They were starting to get a little bit warm, which means that the stomata is actually closed, so it's not transpirating. If it's not transpirating, it's actually not photosynthesizing. If it's not photosynthesizing, it's not producing sugars. So the little bit of water that we had, or a lot of water late, is really needed. The one thing about our vineyards, and I don't have the soil photo up tonight, but our vineyards have a lot of shale and schist and granite in them. They're really, really well drained. So we can take a little bit water than some of our vineyards that have clay. So honestly, it's been welcomed. The humidity has meant that we've had to stay on top of our spraying, because mildew is a bit of a problem. We're through veraison in certain varietals, and veraison is that process where the green grapes turn red. Whites go through veraison as well. It just means now, instead of vegetatively, we're going to a maturation stage, and now we're building sugars. Now we're getting close to harvest. And when we get close to harvest, guess what? The animals love it. So we're busy spraying, we're netting, we're taking care of the fruit. And again, if we have any chance, we're not going to make a lot of wine this year, but I'm hopeful that we can make some incredible wines. Let's see else. There's Terry Hauser. Can I get a bottle of the 18V2 put aside when I make it out for my wine club pickup? Terry, what I would do, send an email to Karen or to Sarah. I don't know if Sarah is on tonight, or call the tasting room, and we can definitely take care of that for you. Gina says, when does harvest typically begin for 2020? Thank you, Gina. Normally, our harvest begins sort of the 29th, 30th, 31st of August, and that would normally be our Chardonnay. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of that. Chardonnay, Viognier, Touriga, which would come in, the last couple of days of August and the first week of September. We have smatterings of little clusters here and there, but our first sort of big pick will probably be in the second week of September with our incredible Merlot that's beautiful and hanging on the vine. So probably a little bit later, which is a good thing because we're actually bottling on Friday. We're bottling, just to get you guys excited, by the way, we're bottling an incredible dessert wine. Our 2017 Heritage, our second version, our 17 Cab, both of which have been in the barrel for 3 years. and then our Reserve Cab Franc and our Reserve Merlot, 2 wines that I know these wines you're going to enjoy as well. Let's see. So, Jeff and Erica says Al has made some comments already. Love it. Thank you, boss. Thanks for playing along. So let's see. So Beth says, we love the wine club. All 3 of us. Beth, your family are gracious and lovely. We appreciate you being a part of the wine club. And if you're not part of the wine club, let me just make a quick pitch. You should be. 3 reasons why. You get to join a family that makes incredible wine, and a family of other wine club members who you get. They're amazing people. It's a community. You get some incredible wines. I know the next 6 shipments, even if you're going to be for the minimum amount of time, you want to be in for the next 6 months. Chardonnay Reserve, Merlot, Cab Franc, Merlot Reserve, Cab Franc Reserve, Block 7, 2017 Cab Sav, Heritage, 2017 Nectar, and then 3 wines only for the wine club members. That's our Block 2 Cab Franc, our Block 7 Cab Franc, and our Block 7 Merlot. So free to join, discounts and all the benefits kick in straight away, but that's the pitch. I don't want to sell the wine club, because I think if you knew what the wine club gave you, you would just want to be a part of it. If you love wine, if you love Virginia wine, I think this is a wonderful opportunity. There's Mr. Schoenberg. He says you have to be able to read, which is not a requirement to grad from OSU. Well, I just read it, so I don't know what that means, boss. But hey, it's good for you. I'm gonna miss the Big Ten rivalry and calling you and saying, do you believe that we put 63 points past the Wolverines? So there you go. Chasey says OSU, is that Oregon State or Oklahoma State? No, Chasey, this is the Ohio State University. Emphasis on the. It's all fun. Let's see what else. There's Chasey France. When is the best time of year to visit the vineyard? Personally, I love the fall, just because of the colors and the Blue Ridge Mountains. It's beautiful. It's cooler. The humidity's not there. It's also harvest. There's hustle and bustle in the cellar. We love when people come into the winery. Ask Lanny White, who's been in while we're pressing. You get to taste juice out of the press. I think it's quite an interesting experience. But I think any time is a beautiful time. Springtime is beautiful. The vineyards are growing. It's green. It's luscious. Summertime is a bit rough. It's just hot and humid. But for me, my favorite time, the best time you should visit a vineyard is in the fall. But honestly, we're in God's country. The vineyard is in a beautiful area. We'd love to visit you. We have a guest. Miss Chris Schoenberg just popped in. I think there's some other questions that you've written down that I haven't answered.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much I missed because I was driving. But,
I don't know. Well, let's jump in.
Did you get a haircut?
Did I get a haircut? I had a fight with the lawnmower and the lawnmower won. Yes, my beautifully talented, amazing wife cut the hair. So what do you think? Let me know.
Why does Vidal Blanc produce secondary fruit?
I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. The question is, why does it have a fruitful secondary bud? I don't know the answer to that question, but I'll tell you what, I'll find out and I will post it. But that's a great question.
Do we have any plans to make a Riesling style?
Ooh. Do we have plans to make a Riesling style? I guess the answer would be what Riesling style? Because Rieslings can be dry, sweet, off-dry. The thing I love about Riesling is when you smell it and taste it, you get that sort of gasoline and that petrol kind of character when you bleed it in the wine. So very, very different varietal. But I'd love to know, whoever answered that question, what do you mean by a Riesling style? And if we know that, perhaps I can better answer the question. But I think, honestly, the Verdejo lends itself more to a style that's really reminiscent of maybe sort of Albarino or Sauvignon Blanc. Sort of that grassiness. But I love Riesling. I love drinking it. I'm not sure we can make a style like that. But let me know what style you're thinking of.
Most of the rest you already touched on.
Alrighty. Alright, there's my lovely wife kind of responding. Brenda Kelsey says she loves the wine club. We love you, Brenda. Kathy Clifton, if you're not part of the wine club, you need to join. Best club ever. She gets 25 cents every time she says that, so I owe you about $5 there, Kathy. Thank you very much. Donna Goff says, is it my imagination or does the 19V squared have a slight hint of effervescence? Donna, I am thrilled you picked that up. Yes, it does. we actually bottle it under a gas, and we actually, prior to bottling, bubble some carbon dioxide into the wine. And what that does for me is just makes the wine a little bit spritzy, a little bit more vibrant and punchy. So great pickup on that, Donna. I don't have any more of the 19 left, so I can't really jump into it. It blows off very, very quickly, but it's all about sort of vibrancy and hey, listen, you can't go wrong with bubbles, right? So let's see what else there. Michael Sahedi finally joined the wine club. Super excited to try the Chardonnay and the Merlot that are not available on the website right now. Well, Michael, if you're a wine club member, you could get the Merlot and the Chardonnay Reserve. It was in this month's wine club selection. And here's another thing. For those that are in the wine club, don't forget, tomorrow we actually have a Zoom meeting. A chat where we can actually have a discussion. We're going to open up both of those wines. We're going to drink your wine club selections. We're going to talk about why I think this is the best Chardonnay Reserve we've ever made, and talk about the Merlot. Tracy says, if I want to see grapes on the vine, which is better, October or September? I would say September. There should be some grapes on the vines in October, but you never know. But if you want to just be safe and be conservative, come around in September and you should see plenty of grapes. Allison says, go the University of Penn. All right, is that Penn State? Kind of the Nittany Lions. Well, I think we beat them too, so it's all good. Go Quakers. Don't know who the Quakers are, so Allison Turkle, let me know. Let's see. I think that's about it. David Maddox says the gray accents are distinguished. Thank you, boss. Yeah, obviously going a little bit grayer and older, a little bit wiser, more mature. But yeah, thank you to the wife. I think she did a great job. Baby in hand, clippers in the other. Love her and love the way she did it. So let's see what else there is.
Wonderful next week.
Oh, yes. So next week's, by the way, is the 2018 Les Vendanges Viognier. The following week is the 2017 Trevelyan White, which was a blend of Verdeo, Vidal, Traminette, 2 Chardonnays and 2 Viogniers. So pretty excited. The LVA, if you don't have it, you should get it. It was our Governor's Cup gold medal. It was one of only 6 2018 vintage wines that got a gold medal. So very sort of chuffed with that. I'm excited to try it. Don't forget the Zoom meeting tomorrow. But if you don't have that, get the link from Sarah. It's at 7 p.m. on Zoom. And again, it's just a chance to chat, to talk face to face, answer some questions, and have some fun. Golly, what else can we talk? Mary says, try to visit when they can offer a tour of the vineyard. Yeah, obviously right now we're trying to be safe. We want you to come out. We are desperate to see our wonderful folks. We're just trying to do it safely for our staff, safely for our customers. We've gone to great lengths to make sure that people visit us, have fun, enjoy the wine, but we do so safely with social distancing. But if it is allowable, if we can do it, we do a spring vineyard tour, which is generally around April or so. It's a wonderful time to walk the vineyard, drink some wine, and chat. Limba says mature looking, certainly not in personality. There's Sarah Elizabeth Cron. There's the 19 LVA Viognier to compare to the 18 LVA, but we are tasting in the bundle. It was the 2018 tomorrow. Sharon Sobieski, I believe, is planning our first visit tomorrow. Sharon, I would love to say hi. Let me know that you're there. Let Sarah or Karen know that you're in the tasting room. I'd love to come and say hi, introduce. Thank you for joining us, and we're welcoming you tomorrow. So Virginia Wine Time, Paul and Warren, another great tasting. Thank you so much. Appreciate you guys. Really appreciate it. So any other questions regarding the wine club at keswickvineyards.com. Sarah, tasting room at keswickvineyards.com. Send to Karen. Reach out, message us online and Facebook. Kathy is really great at getting back to you. Specials tonight, Kathy Clifton, glad you asked. I'll repeat them. For tonight, through midnight only, you get this beautiful wine for 5% over and above your normal discount. To you, Kathy, because we like you so much, we're going to give you 30%. But we like everyone who's a gold member, so 30% off. It's only 60 bottles available, so it is first come, first served, and it's only active through midnight tonight. So on our website, keswickvineyards.com, get on it. I think it is the featured item Get on there right now. Order. It's a beautiful wine. It's a pretty wine. So let me ask Chris if there's any other questions. I think we got most of them. So let's do this. It's 5:28. An hour goes by very quickly. We're having fun. So thank you. Simple as that. Thank you for being you. Thank you for supporting not only Keswick, but the Virginia wine industry during what is challenging and tough times. So thank you from our family, my family, our greater family. We really, really, really do appreciate it. And we thank you for your patronage, because we know that you have so many options, and we love and appreciate the fact that you buy our wines. Secondly, take care. Look after each other. Pick up the phone. Tell people you love them. The only way we're going to get through this bloody thing is by being safe. So let's do it. Let's get over it. Let's get back to life as we know it. So look after each other. Be safe. Be kind. Be the best you can be. It's only 6 days and 23 hours till we chat again, unless you're joining us tomorrow for the Zoom. So to finish up, I think the 18 is beautiful. Yeah, the 19 is good. The 19 is wonderful, but we're comparing sort of, again, like I said to Al, Ohio State 19, Michigan 18. It's all good, but two different wines, which I think is the beauty of vintage variation. I think they're both phenomenal. I think the 19 is a wine that you can just pound on its own. 18, a little bit more texture, a little bit more rich, a little bit more sort of food friendly, but you can't go wrong with either. So a happy accident in 2012, a wine that has become so popular, and a wine that I love drinking and I love making. So thank you guys. I will see you in a week, unless Chris is sort of waving. What do we have there, Chris?
Suzanne wants to know how to join the Zoom. So if other members have
Suzanne. How is that? Suzanne Barber?
Yes.
Suzanne Barber, how do you join the Zoom? Reach out to Sarah. Sarah, if you don't mind, if you're still on, if you can reach out to Suzanne Barber and give her the link and the password. Suzanne, we would love to see you tomorrow, so thank you for answering. Anyone else, by the way, if you're in the wine club and you have your Chardonnay and your Merlot, even if you're in the wine club and you're a silver and you just want to jump in, we'd love to have you tomorrow. So reach out to Sarah Cron, our wine club manager, and she'll take care of it for you. So, thank you. Appreciate you. Love you all. Love the wines. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate all your support. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Have a great week. I'll see a lot of you tomorrow. I'm excited to drink two really incredible wines with you. I hope you loved this V Squared as much as I did. Just a pretty, pretty, pretty wine. So until then, God bless you and your families. Stay safe. Be kind. And I'll see you right here. Same time next week. 2018 LVA Vineyard. Good night, everybody.